If you're looking to understand the essence of swinging jazz guitar, then I think you need look no further than Charlie Christian's Rose Room solo. For me, it's a masterclass in phrasing, tone, and improvisation. It was a critical song for Charlie, and at one point his future depended on how he soloed over the changes to it. And I'll share that story with you today, as well as break down why this solo is so damn good, and most importantly, what can you learn from it? But firstly, let me play it for you. Now that was played on my L50 ES150 conversion from 1938 through a vintage 47 replica of the kind of amp Charlie Christian used. Now we know that from Barney Kessel that he played with 90% downstrokes with a big triangular pick, and I've tried to do the same. Now why was Rose Room so critical to Charlie's career? Well, the story goes that the legendary music producer John Hammond, whom fixed musicians for Benny Goodman's band, had gotten Charlie Christian the opportunity to play for Benny at a rehearsal. Now he played for him T for 2 and it didn't go well. In Charlie's own words, he said, "I was so nervous with him just sitting there and looking at me, I could hardly play." Benny Goodman also apparently didn't care for Charlie's flashy clothes. But later that night, Benny was playing at the Victor Hugo restaurant in Beverly Hills, and Hammond secretly had Charlie's gear set up on stage whilst Benny was on a break. Surprised to see Charlie Christian there on the stage when Benny returned, he thought he would test him out. So he went straight into Rose Room to see what he was made of, and the song lasted for 43 minutes, with Charlie reportedly taking over 20 choruses. Goodman was floored by Charlie's performance, and that night changed the course of Charlie's career, and he went on to become a central figure in Goodman's sextet until his untimely death in 1942. So for me, there's quite a few takeaways to this solo. Now my transcription, as well as a slower performance and breakdown and backing track, is available on my Patreon page on the lowest tier, link in the description. For me, the overwhelming strength of this solo is the structure. It flows incredibly well and is really easy to listen to, just logically flows nicely. He only had one chorus, so he had to make it count. Let's explore how he did that. A common feature in many of his solos is the use of a riff, or I suppose a motif, that he repeats, often with variations. Now the opening to the solo is just the same 4 notes repeated, which creates a strong start to the solo. Another example of this kind of riff motif repetition approach occurs in bars 20 to 22, this time more bluesy with slurs. Now the thing that connects those two examples, they're both strong melodically. The listener easily picks up on the repetition and naturally wonders where things are going, when is he going to move away from that idea? There's more of a story to it that's an easier listen rather than just someone just burning through notes. Now the idea of playing with arpeggio substitutions and upper extensions is something most people associate with the bebop movement and beyond. But in this solo there's 2 great examples where he plays a different arpeggio over the chord in question to create a really smooth transition from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. Here it is in bars 2 and 3. And then again in 18 to 19, exactly the same chord changes. And it's something, if you study his solos, other solos, it's something you'll hear again and again. Now the chord is E flat 7, dominant chord, and at the end of the bar before it goes to A flat 6, our 1 chord, he plays a different arpeggio. He plays an arpeggio of the minor 4 chord as a minor 6. Now we are in the key of A flat major in Rosarium, and he plays the 4 chord, which would normally be D flat, as a minor 6, D flat minor 6, giving us this sound: B flat 7, E flat 7, then the arpeggio sub, D flat minor 6 into A flat 6. And this is a great moment because I feel it really pulls you back to the 1 chord with a classic moment of tension and release. One of my favourite aspects of Charlie's playing is what I would call his ability to shift gear rhythmically. Now typically on AABA form tunes, he phrases the A's nice amounts of space, you know, call and response phrasing, and then often goes to the B section, and I'd call it blitzing the B, where he goes for a constant stream of 8th notes or maybe triplet lines and just fills the space so you get the contrast between the sections. Now in bars 12 and 13, in this particular solo, he certainly puts his foot on the gas and goes into 2 solid bars of triplets. It comes out of nowhere and as a result is really impactful. I find with the majority of Charlie's solos that they are really well structured. They flow well and have phrases that just seamlessly run into one another and fit the structure of the song in question incredibly well. And there's a couple things in this particular solo that helps him achieve that. Firstly, he often ends his phrases on strong notes, so chord tones. This happens on pretty much every phrase. The effect? For me, it's like well punctuated language. It makes it clear to the listener that the phrase is over. Whereas in contrast, if you finish on a dissonant note or a note that doesn't resolve so well, the idea just doesn't sound so strong and you lose that sense of structure. Secondly, there's often a rise and fall and contour to his lines that helps give structure and direction and flow to lines. Now these all really, for me, help create a very cohesive and strong solo. Now many of my favourite jazz guitar players, people like Wes Montgomery, Herb Ellis, Barney Kessel, Mary Osborne, George Benson, they were all heavily influenced by Charlie Christian. Now in some cases, those players, the influence is incredibly obvious. For others, he was crucial in the formative years of their playing and a big influence in helping them get started and inspiring them to pick up the guitar. For me, he sits at a really sweet spot in the history of music and the guitar. A swing player with the beginnings of bebop. And the big takeaways I've learnt from him are his phrasing and the way he structures his solos. For me, it's less about the notes he uses, it's more about the phrasing and the way he brings things together across the form of a song. Now, personally, I think it's easy for us guitar players to get preoccupied with arpeggios and scales and so forth. Important things to have down on your instrument, but all of those things are ultimately meaningless unless they are packaged into musical phrases which then have the potential to develop into a coherent and structured solo. By learning his Rosarium solo and other solos, studying his craft, you can learn this too and translate it into your own improvising. So please check out my transcription PDF over on Patreon. Over there I've also got a slower performance of it on there, and I also play the solo and break it down in more detail. There's also the backing track over there for you to practice it too. Learning the songs that Charlie Christian was famous for is also a great place to start, so why not check out my video on the chords to Flying Home, a very accessible song for soloing. Maybe I'll break down that one another time, but if you've enjoyed today's video, please leave a comment. Maybe suggest other solos by Charlie that you'd like me to break down in future. Don't forget jazz guitar lessons with myself, Andy, every Wednesday. Until next time, you take care.